Chen Yingke, in Institutional Origins of the Sui Tang Period and Political History of the Tang Dynasty, repeatedly argues that the Li Tang imperial house emerged from the Guanlong military bloc, combining Hanwei ritual institutions and Xianbei tribal customs. Its core political structure inherited both the procedural legality of premier consultation and Mengxia review since the Han and Jin. ND carried the northern ethnic political character of aristocratic collective deliberation, not one-man rule. The Guanlong bloc's fusion of civil and military and collective decision-making epitomized the blending of Hu and Han institutions. THIS fusion ensured that veto and countersignature under the TANG3 departments were not merely civil procedural restraints, but also embodied the deliberative spirit of tribal military democracy, providing dual institutional genes for power balance in the imperial era. Tang Changgru, in 3 treatises on the history of the Wei-Jin Northern-Southern Sui Tang period, further corroborates this through institutional evolution. He notes that although Sui Tang central procedures showed a Southern court tendency, inheriting the veto, review, and assembly conventions of the Southern dynasty's civil system, the tribal deliberative traditions of northern peoples such as the Xianbei and Chile deeply embedded in decision-making mechanisms through Northern Wei, Western Wei, and Northern Zhou institutional sedimentation lifted edicts requiring premier consultation, Mengxia, correction, and collective signing from convention to an inviolable political law. Zhu Zongbin also verifies that while premier countersignature and veto power originated in the Wei-Jin and crystallized in the Sui, they achieved rigidity in the Tang precisely because Northern Hu deliberative traditions and Central Plain Confucian public discourse mutually reinforced one another, jointly suppressing monarchical autocracy and forming a governance order of bounded imperial power, policy following procedure. This laid the institutional foundation for Song scholar official shared rule. In the Song, veto, countersignature, and shared rule ideals matured further. Zhao Dongmei clearly argues in works such as The Transformation of the Great Song and the Zhao Song that Northern Song's shared rule of the realm with scholar officials was not empty rhetoric. BUT institutional practice with procedural restraint as its skeleton and scholar official subjectivity as its core, ZHONGSHU governing, administration, the Privy Council military, the censorate supervision, palace secretaries vetoing, premiers countersigning each link, reinforcing the next. This both continued the procedural spirit of the Tang 3 departments and resonated with the long-formed northern ethnic political psychology of collective deliberation, shared decision, shared responsibility. Chen Mu highly praised Song politics as the peak of traditional Confucian governance, precisely because of this convergence of 2 sources: Central Plain Confucian values of people-centrism, public discourse, and remonstrance as the moral core, steppe people norms of deliberation, balance, and non-autocracy as institutional inertia. Together they shaped the unique power restraint structure of the Tang and Song, elevating premier countersignature and veto review beyond mere administrative lochen to become the most operable institutional expression of China's traditional shared rule ideal. 第11章契约轮替与共治案例五人授受辽经世选 Chapter 11 Contractual Succession and Cases of Shared Rule The Wuren Compact Liao Hereditary Election Jin Succession Conventions 第一节辽代世选制贵族契约与轮流执政 Section A Liao Hereditary Election Aristocratic Contract and Rotational Rule Liao Kang's elite military governors Yili Jin and senior ministers of the northern and southern courts were chosen through hereditary election from the imperial and consort clan aristocracies. Power was determined by collective nomination, rotational rule, and selection of the worthy, without fixed primogeniture, relying on aristocratic assembly compact and consensus. This represented a mature form of northern ethnic aristocratic contractual politics. Chen Shu, Draft History of Khitan Politics, 1982, p. 79. 第二节金代案班伯吉列约定继位与贵族合议 Section R Jin Anban Bojili Agreed succession and aristocratic deliberation. In early Jin institutions, the Anban Bojili served as designated heir apparent, chosen by core aristocrats through collective deliberation, with a publicly agreed succession order. This established a rule of aristocratic consultation and pact-keeping, in direct continuity with Liao hereditary election and the later Yuan Wuren Compact, Mikio, Mikami, Studies on Jin History, 1000, 970, pg 112。第三节，元代继承契约，五人授受与约定轮替。Section 3 Yuan Succession Compact, the Wuren Transfer and Agreed Rotation. Yuan Emperor Wuzong, Keisha, and Emperor Renzong, Ayurparibhadra, concluded an explicit succession compact. Fraternal succession, uncle-to-nephew transfer, rotational rule. Both strictly observed the pact, ensuring smooth and orderly power transition, a rare case in ancient China of dynastic rotation executed entirely by contract. Han Rulan, History of the Yuan Dynasty, 1986, p. 177. Based on written agreement and aristocratic consensus, the Wuren Compact embodied the spirit of contractual rotation. You rule, then I rule. It was structurally highly isomorphic, with Liaojin hereditary election and Western European aristocratic contractual succession. Xiao, Chiqing, New Explorations in Yuan History, 1983, p. 92。第12章，明代废相，专制回归与制度约束消亡。Chapter 12, The Abolition of the Chancellery in the Ming. Return to autocracy and the death of institutional restraint. Zhu Yuanzhang abolished the office of Chief Minister and the Department of State Affairs, ending a millennium-old tradition of chancellery checks and balances. With no core institutional restraint, imperial power became unbound, and Chinese politics entered an era of absolute autocracy. Qianmu, Traditional Chinese Government and Politics, 1955, p. 98. Ming Grand Secretariat Piaoni, drafting proposals, and Directorate of Ceremonial Pihong, red stamp approval, were mere appendages of imperial power, possessing no veto, no countersignature, no independent decision-making authority, and thus unable to form rigid checks and balances. 吴宗国，明内阁制度史，1989年第67页，第13章，清代皇权的结构整合、制度创制与道统归一。Chapter 13, Structural Integration of Imperial Power in the Qing, Institutional Innovation and the Unification of Daotong and Jitong. 第一节，密建皇储，清代宗法制的突破与储位传承的理性化。Section E, Secret Imperial Succession, a breakthrough in Qing patriarchal law and the rationalization of heir apparent transmission. The Qing abandoned both central plain primogeniture and northern ethnic hereditary election. Emperor Yongzheng created the secret succession system. The emperor personally wrote the heir's name, sealed it in a golden box, and hid it behind the upright and bright plaque in the Palace of Heavenly Purity, keeping a duplicate secret edict on his person. Upon the emperor's death, princes and high ministers jointly opened the box and enthroned the named heir. This system achieved selection of the worthy over the eldest, no open struggle, smooth transition, exclusion of princely interference, and elimination of empress dowager and consort clan meddling. Secret succession represented the most mature form of ancient Chinese succession institutions, replacing open succession struggles with secret merit-based selection, balancing legitimacy and stability. Mengsen, Lectures on Qing History, 1947, p. 213. Secret succession broke the absolute bondage of primogeniture, selecting heirs by talent, virtue, and prestige, concentrating power in the capable and avoiding child or incompetent rulers, an important safeguard of Qing political stability. 代议，简明清史，1980年，第247页。The system entailed no open contest, no mutiny risk, no aristocratic coercion, relying entirely on imperial judgment and institutional procedure. The most stable succession design within a centralized framework. Guo Chenkang, A Study of the Qing Imperial Succession System, 2003, p. 89. Although Qing's secret succession ensured stable inheritance, it operated atop absolute imperial power with no separation, no checks, no public deliberation, no contractual restraint. It remained fundamentally the peak of monarchical autocracy, essentially distinct from Northern Song shared rule and Western contractual constitutionalism. Qianmu, 1955, p. 121, Mengsen, 1947, p. 236. 第二节，做君作师，康熙朝道统治统合一之创制。Section R, Monarchist Teacher. The Kangxi reign's creation of the unity of Daotong and Jitong. From the Han, through the Song and Ming, traditional Chinese politics sustained a structural separation between Daotong, legitimacy of the way, moral cultural authority, and zhitong, legitimacy of governance, political authority. This separation was the fundamental precondition for limited governance and the institutional foundation of shared rule with scholar officials, principle as supreme, and ancestral institutions above all. Yu Yingxi systematically argues in Zhu Xi's Historical World and Scholars in Chinese Culture that the monarch held zitong, governing, commanding, military, law enforcement. Scholar officials transmitted daotong, safeguarding classics, upholding principle, judging right and wrong, correcting the ruler's heart, defending public discourse, preserving ancestral law.